by next week or upper week, we probably would have crossed the 200 million mark. That's if we have not already done so previously, because we already are struggling with statistics. But that's not all. We're a country with a GDP of 411 billion as of last December. Our current inflation rate is 11.2%. Some of you know that. One Nigerian naira is currently, you need to save 1 naira for 1.5 years to buy 1 pound. Because you need 470 naira to buy 1 pound. So if I saved a naira every day, it will take me something in the region of about at least 1 year and 3 months, almost 4 months, to buy 1 pound. So that's not the interesting one. I mean, today we also have the highest mortality rates amongst women. So if you're having a child in Nigeria, the highest chance that a woman will die in childbirth is currently in Nigeria. If she manages to make it out of that, valley of the shadow of death, then 1 out of 5 children will die before the age of 5. If the child manages to get past that valley of the shadow of death, then the child would have to struggle with deciding whether to join the group of children out of school or not. We have the highest number of children out of school in Nigeria. Currently, about 13.2 million children were estimated as of last October to be out of school in Nigeria. For those who manage to go through school in Nigeria and get into what I would think of especially as tertiary institutions, the average right now says that you spend 6.5 years studying a 4-year course, and you spend 8 years studying a 5-year course. And for those who are able to endure that travail, then you will then come out into the other side of the labor market, where 23.1% of Nigerians are unemployed. Over 40% of Nigerian young people are unemployed. About 11 million Nigerians have never found work in their life. So they've never gained any work experience. Now, all of that may look like the negatives. And we'll talk about that, and it's important that we talk about it. Because again, what it's impacting is everything else. The more you learn, the more you earn. So the less you earn, or the less you learn, the less you earn. Today, 108 million Nigerians are considered homeless. Living with somebody, living under the bridge, living somewhere. So we do have a national challenge on our hand. We'd almost like to call it a national crisis. To say, we've got a nation that is on the brink. But at the same time, what is amazing is that we've got to look at what it is that is beneath. Nigeria is one of the most resourced nations on earth. In fact, I have many times asked people all across the world, and I'm sure you guys may have better data than I do, about how, do you know any nation that is more blessed than Nigeria in natural resources? And very few people have been able to answer that. Nigeria has 34 mineral resources of economically viable quantity, any of which can literally, practically, be the major funding resource for the nation. But then we're only leveraging on one. Okay? Last week, Monday, the Minister of State for Mines, Steel and Development, Alhaji Abubakar Buhari, did a press conference where they unveiled at the site of a mining site, they found the really great or large deposit of platinum in Nigeria. And it's been found in a place called Kuchiko. And Kuchiko is near Suleja, which is in the Niger State, right? And what they say about that platinum apparently is that when they've tested it in the, using global standards, the Nigerian platinum actually is of better quality than the South African platinum, which is currently known to be the highest quality of platinum in the world. So in a way, the high highest quality of platinum in the world has just been found in Nigeria. And it's been found in Niger State. I need to tell you something a little bit about Niger State because, I mean, first of all, my running mate, Mrs. Khadija Iya, is actually from Bida, so that's Niger State. So, you know, and in the course of course, touring the nation, you know, we had to go to Niger, go to Bida, go across Niger. Now, between Bida and Agui is the no road that is known to be the best worst road in Nigeria. And when they say best worst road, what they mean is that of all the bad roads in Nigeria, this is like the baddest. You know, it's a road that you can barely see the car that is ahead of you, and maybe just 50 meters in between. I've never seen anything like it before. And yet, that is a land with great platinum, but that's not all that Niger has. Niger also has zinc, Niger has lead in huge quantities. And then Niger has gold. And yet you look at the Niger and say, wow, how can a nation, a state like Niger, have the best worst? It speaks to the paradox that the state of Nigeria is. And gold is not only found in Niger, gold is actually found in 11 states across Nigeria. 28 local governments across Nigeria have gold. One very interesting one that I probably mentioned quite often on the campaign trail was one particular one is called, gold is found in a village called Ikberido. And Ikberido is in a place called Atakumosa East Local Government. Now, those who have done the mining geological surveys have said that Ikberido has 7 basins of gold. One of the basins has proven deposits of over 1 million ounces of gold. And the quality of Ikberido's gold actually goes on the international market for $1,123 per ounce. So Ikberido has, in one of the 7 basins of gold, over $1.2 billion worth of gold. In one of the 7 basins. Atakumosa East has 3 villages that they found gold in. That's one local government. And unfortunately still, for many of the last few months and years, as many people would know, Osun State, where Atakumosa East is in, has strong salaries. They've been owing salaries sometimes for 8 months. Again, this is the amazing picture. So much blessing, yet so little benefit to the people. And you know, it's not only that. I'm just sticking on this gold story for a while. I went to a place called Umuekiti. Umuekiti also has large deposits of gold. And during the campaign trail, I had the pleasure of sitting down with the king of Umu. And he said to me, oh, Fela, I really hope that you can come in and help us make a difference. Because, and he said something that broke my heart. He said, we have not had light, a flash of light, come through our bulbs in the last 12 years. That is not in 1955. I'm not talking about 1970. I'm talking about January 2019. And Omu, that means a 12-year-old child has never seen light before coming out of the ball. And yet Omu has large deposits. In fact, one of the guys who took me on the journey to Omu, a young man by the name of Enaji from somewhere, I think it's Kogi State. Enaji was telling me the story because I noticed that this guy is a driver, right? But he was extremely well spoken. So I got involved, and I always talk to people about what their story is and what's going on with them. And Enaji was saying to me how, oh well, he had to get a job as a driver, but he told me how he had just come back from the Libyan desert. I was like, what? Libyan desert? Yeah. He said, well, he was in a university, I think it was one of the federal universities, I think in Niger State. And somehow his father had died when he was in year 2, so he couldn't pay his fees any longer. And so he decided to sell. Listen to this. He sold all his assets and raised 500,000 naira so that he could travel by the Libyan desert to get into Europe. And the question was, if you had 500,000, I'm sure, I mean, if that money was placed in First Bank, if you had 500,000 naira, most of us started business with less than 10,000 or 15,000 naira. So you find out that, Enagio's problem was not access to capital. Enagio's problem was access to hope. What Enagio was looking for was not capital to start a business. He was looking for hope. A hope of a better life and a brighter future. That's what Enagio was looking for. And that's what over 20,000 Nigerians look for every year when they cross the most dangerous, the most perilous terrain of the Libyan desert. And he talked to me about how for 12 days they will be going in a car, and there comes a point in time when people start fighting themselves in the trucks that they're carrying for the bottles of water in their hands. A woman told her son, "Take it, let me die. Take the water." So, we see these aspects of it. These people just going in search of a place where things work. We see these pictures all the time, don't we? All of these people have one thing in common. Most of them are looking for a nation where things work. They are coming from blessed countries, but they're looking for great nations. And you know what happens is, as you know, most of the time, they never make it there. And then you find people who have worked to build their own nation, not run away from the nations they should build, but have built their own, come into retirement, and these guys are hanging out as retirees on the beach, and now they have become fishers of men. And I'm not sure that that's what Christ meant when he said, "I'll make you fishers of men." But it just speaks again to the challenges that we face. Nations that practically have nothing have become great nations. They become nations where people love to live, love to work, love to do business in and do business with. These nations, as you know, mostly have one thing in common. And that thing, as far as I'm concerned, is good governance. It's the one thing that makes every nation that works work. And when I talk about good governance, I'm simply talking about having good people in the 4 major sectors of governance. Governance and government are 2 different things. Governance includes the political sector, which has the especially in the democratic setting, your party executives, your delegates, your members. Then there is what I call the policy sector. And in the policy sector, you're talking about 2 kinds of people. The elected officials that typically come out of the political system, and then the appointed officials that are also connected to them. Here is where policy formulation takes place. The policy ideas take place. Here is where philosophy takes place. What's the ideological framework that the party will drive? But here is turning the ideology of the party into policies. Now, the public service, on the other hand, is meant to be the interpreters of the policy. In other words, their job is to create the enabling environment for the private sector who will be the executors of the policies. And so in nations that work, you will find that the private sector is executing the policies of the government with relative ease. And they are supported by ministries, departments, and agencies of the government to ensure that life is better and it's easier for private sectors to thrive. And that the regulatory authorities are not there as hawks just to control, but they are there as enablers, empowerers, with the question in mind, how can I help you? And of course, that culture is usually drawn from the leadership culture of those who are in the policy sector, the elected officials who mostly come out of political parties. And in nations that work, nations where people are running to, they understand that their brightest and best must be found in each one of these sectors. And so you will find out that those brightest and best are people that typically are competent, who have the ability to produce results with whatever the resources that they have, the ability to attract people that are also competent, and that's what capacity really is about. And then there are people who have the courage to take the right decisions and do the right thing regardless of whose ox is gored. And then, of course, they have compassion in their heart. Most of these people that are in great nations, that go into positions of leadership, are going in with a heart of service and compassion. With a heart that says, the people deserve more. People should not die on the road. People should not be homeless. And that is what pursues them into the journey of leadership. Of course, there are also people who have charisma. And by charisma, I'm not just talking about swag, but actually the capacity to be able to influence and inspire a particular kind of culture in the heart of other people. And usually, there are people who are credible, who can be trusted. People who are transparent, they're not scared of being transparent, they're accountable, but they can be trusted. They can make you a promise and you know they intend to keep their promise. And most importantly, people who are consistent. In other words, you can see a track record of performance outside government. Those are the kind of people that you will usually find in countries that work in government. That consistency many times is really an element of character. It tells you what the kind of people they are. Because you know what happens is that when you find people who do not have strong values, they will most times use the immunity that comes with their office to commit acts of impunity. So you need people who will do the right thing when nobody can catch them and nobody can arrest them. And this is really the kind of people that I call good people. The challenge is, how do you get good people into governance? How do you get people who understand that positions may give you authority, but that doesn't make you a leader? That leadership is not about having a position of authority and having, policemen around you to clear the roads from the people who you're supposed to be securing with the policemen. But that leadership really is what I call the ability to influence others, to solve problems and to deliver desired outcomes. This is really what leadership is. And leadership is not just the ability to solve problems, but the ability to make places better, to make people better, to make things better. This is what leaders do. And in great nations that give hope to people where things work, they tend to have leaders in positions of authority, not rulers. So, it comes back to these four things, because this is where I'm going to begin to just wrap my thoughts around. It's understanding that we need the brightest and best in political, policy, public, and private sectors. And when you don't have the right people in the political parties, then they will produce elected officials that are not the right people. They would attract advisors, commissioners, ministers that have and know nothing about the task at hand. And so what then happens is that development leaves the table. It's no longer the agenda, it's just politics and power play. And what then happens is that those people will write letters to all the heads of all the ministries, departments, and agencies and tell them, my cousin, who is not qualified, is coming with a letter. And so before you know it, you are saturating the public service with people who couldn't find a job. And before you know it, those guys now become the regulatory authorities. It's INEC, it's, you know what I mean. And so before you know it, they do not have the capacity to hold accountable the people who wrote the letters to them and those people. And so before you know it, the entire system collapses. This is what makes a blessed country not be a great nation. And you ask, where then do we start to fix it? Because what I've done over the years was to try first as a management consultant. My focus was on the private sector. And over time, I started realizing, gosh, even if we helped, first client, one of our clients, when Dr. Durotoye came into the office as a newly appointed managing director, his first retreat, I was invited to come and speak, and he invited me, and I would like you to please thank him for that. To come and help set also the leadership, vibe and thinking and culture for First Bank at that time. But we realized that no matter how much we helped banks like First Bank, there was still the challenge of, look, nobody can out-succeed their country. No bank can out-succeed their country. And so you realize that until you fix governance, everything that you're doing is like pouring water into a basket. I mean, we went, and I've always believed that Nigeria has what it takes to become one of the best nations to live in the world. I just believe it. I'm an incurable optimist about Nigeria. I believe that it can be done. And it was the reason why we set up a company called Gemstone, which really is an acronym for raising a generation that is empowered, motivated, and scared to operate with natural excellence. One of the core things that we realize is that nations are not land. Nations are people. And you cannot have a great nation without having a great people. And the people are essentially how they think. So if you want to fix a country, you've got to change what I call the internal operating system, aka the PVC, and I'm not talking about permanent voters card, I'm talking about the personal value code of the people. And so we created a value code that was framed on cards like this, and we've given out over 420,000 of these cards free of charge in Nigeria over time. And it has 10 simple values on it. Make a positive impact on everyone you meet and everywhere I go. In fact, if you look at it, it starts by saying, my personal creed. This day I hereby commit to live a lifestyle of leadership and excellence and to do all within my power to transform my country into the most desirable nation to live in. And it says, to this end, I will make a positive impact on everyone I meet and everywhere I go. Just imagine what will happen if every Nigerian became, held on to that code as personally. I will be a solution provider, not a part of the problem to be solved. I'll be a role model worthy of emulation. I'll be my best in all I do, particularly the things I'm naturally good at. I will do the right thing at all times, regardless of who's doing the wrong thing. I will value time and make the best use of it. I will care and show respect to all through my words and my actions. I will consciously build a great legacy starting now today and every day. I'll live a life of integrity and honor, and I will make my family, my nation, and my God proud. Imagine what will happen if every Nigerian held these as their personal value group. And you can imagine what would happen. And we started to take these values across using volunteers who had signed up. And we've taken it to over 331 primary schools and secondary schools. The values have been endorsed by Association of Private Educators of Nigeria, by the Mortgage Bankers Association, and more recently, we've been talking even about to Pengerton, right? Petroleum and Natural Gas Association of senior staff of that industry, to say, how do we take these values into each and every one of them? And you can see some of the kids in primary schools that we've given these values to. They have a leadership club, where in some of the schools that they have leadership club, these kids sit down and decide which value the next week they're going to highlight into the heart of the children. And so they will decide whether they're using dance, drama, music, art to be able to highlight that value. In secondary schools, all across Nigeria, that's in Kwara State. We've gone to 78 campuses sharing these values, talking to lecturers. That's in Benson Idahosa University. Having campus leadership programs. These were literally, over the last 14, 15 years, I left my business behind. Said, we have to fix this country. And was doing all of these things at our own personal cost. Set up the Fela Durotoye Leadership Network. Started to see how do we mentor, and as of last year, we had over 30,000 people that I was personally mentoring to see how we can drive that. People who will then go out and take and this was a program where we got 900 speakers who we are training to be able to go into the industry all across the nation to share values, leadership, transformation. All of this because you can't wait for the government to fix the government.
Come on. Yes.
I don't know whether you get what I'm trying to say. So this is the things that some of you heard about the Mushi Makeover project that we did. We done things in education and all of that. But in a sense, like I said, we realize that no matter how much of this good work you're doing, as long as you don't fix government, you're pouring water into a basket. And so for us, the burning question is, how do we get good governance, especially starting in 2019? And it was this thing that kept me up awake for many nights. How to get, and that's really what led me. For many of the people who heard me talk about my journey, it was about getting good people to run at all the different levels. And people say to me, Fela, why don't you go and start from House of Assembly? I said, well, if I start from House of Assembly, then I'm limited in my ability to inspire people to run for governorship. And they said, well, okay, but if I'm a governor, yes, maybe I can inspire people to run for House of Assembly. They said, well, what about the House of Reps? I said, well, then I can't get people to run for Senate. But if I run for president, then I can inspire people to run for Senate, to run for House of Assembly, to run for, and get even people to run for presidency. Which was what we did. And we will see the result. But the other interesting thing was we needed people to vote. And so we ran out, going out there constantly telling people, guys, you need to go out and get your voter's card. Get your voter's card. We went to companies, we went to churches, we went to mosques, we went all across the place. Went on TV, went on radio. Go and get your voter's card. And we're showing people the numbers. And so essentially, the interesting thing we found was every time we asked people to go and vote, they say, who will we vote for? We go and ask people who we thought should be able to run, go and run. They will say, the people are the people that will vote for us. They are enlightened, they don't vote. They're on social media. They will tweet, but INEC does not count tweets. So here is a disconnect. And the question was, how do we run? How do we do this? So I decided to put my hatred for politics behind and say, look, if we're going to save a nation, here I am, cut my neck. And if I can step forward, maybe other people can step in.
So good.
And that was what led to that journey that many of you know. Of course, that was what was called the Running for a New Nigeria movement. And I'm so proud to know that just in our own party, Alliance for New Nigeria, over 260 people ran for office at the various levels.
Super.
Not to speak about, sometimes when I meet people who would say to me, I met a gentleman at an airport, he said to me coming out of the plane, Fela, I'm running for governor in Ogun State. I'm not running on your party. I know you have somebody that is running on your party, but I just wanted you to know that it was when I heard you that I decided to run.
Super.
And for everybody who got a voter's card because of Fela, that was me winning. I don't know whether you understand. So I won before the election.
Super. Yeah.
What I set out to do was accomplished by getting people in and people to join political parties, people to donate. It was getting the good people to get involved. Look, there are 1,588 people, that elected officials that will be sworn in this year. Okay? And this was basically one of the reasons why I had gone there. Now I know, can I ask for a few minutes? Let me do this in 2 minutes. Look at 2015. 67 million people registered to vote in 2015. And I was showing people these numbers. But only 56 million of them got voters' cards, which means actually had the ability to vote on the day of elections. Of course, only 31 million of them came out on the day of elections. And the total number of valid votes that were counted was 28 million. It's very interesting that 28.1 million of those valid votes went to the two, what you would call big parties. And so in 2015, the non-conventional parties, the non-establishment parties had only 400,000 votes. What we set to do was we needed to understand, look, if you think about it, 28 million people that had PVCs did not vote. These guys are not usually the area boys. The area boys are usually already here. These are not the Yamajas. They are not the people. These are people who money was on offer, but they didn't sell their vote. The problem was not only did they not sell their vote, they just didn't vote. And in talking to them, they will say to you, yeah, I wasn't inspired by any of the candidates, I wasn't inspired by their agenda, blah, 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 blah. But that becomes even more interesting when you think about it, that 39, almost 40 million people that registered to vote, who had temporary voters cards, these had permanent voters cards. But 40 million people that went as far as getting some kind of voter's card did not vote. That's not all. Look at this number. 96 million people were above the age of 18 in 2015. And 68 million voters card, or 67 points plus voters card, were issued. All right? So look at it. 28 million votes shared between the two parties. 40 million people did not vote for the two parties. 28 million people did not even bother to go and get their voters cards. Are you seeing what I'm showing you? Because most of these people knew that there was money at stake, but they didn't need that 3 million, 3,000, 4,000. But they just didn't care enough for their nation to go out and get involved. So when you think about it this way, I don't know whether you're about to see what I'm about to show you. 96 million people were above the age of 18. 68 million people got their PVC and TVC, but 68 million people did not vote. If you add 28 million people that didn't get their voters cards, with 40 million people that had voters cards that did not vote. So this was the target. It wasn't the Yaloja. It wasn't the area boy. It was the intellectuals, the people like yourself and myself, students, people who know better, people who suffer the most when the quality of governance is not well delivered. Those were the people who were trying to get up and do something. It's very interesting that, like you see, 28 million people voted, but 68 million people didn't vote. When we started trying to find out what is stopping people, this was the picture that hit me one day. I started to scream. Because I saw a mass of potential capacity. People who could do something but were refusing to do so. And when you ask them, what's the problem? They start talking to you about they will not let us. Our votes will not count. I said, well, for sure, a vote you don't cast can never be counted. You know? And so we realized that much of the challenges that we were dealing with were just mental challenges. Why are people not voting? Mental challenges. So even when we now stepped into the game, we found the most amazing. These chains are big and they are real. So we found the people, and these are just some of my own feedback that things I have to deal with. You know, people, I don't know how many of you first had that one of, he doesn't have experience.
Yeah.
Well, so the question was, okay, are you happy with the way the country is? No. Are you happy with the way that we've been run for the time? No. The people who have experience, what have they given you? Potholes, generators, different kinds of things. Okay, so do you want something different? Yes. But if you want something different, can you also have experience if it is different? They will say to you, no. So why are you shouting about experience when experience has not brought you what you want? And then the people who have leadership experience are now going in and you are saying, I'm not still going to vote because you don't have political experience. What political experience would have done is to make us like the people who already have political experience. All right? They said, oh, there was a cabal. Now there's a cabal that, I said, well, look at the numbers, guys. How strong can the cabal be if they cannot even mobilize more than 30 to 40% of the people to vote? You guys are more in number than the cabals can be able to mobilize. Oh, they said, Fela is too soft. He's too much of a You know, Fela is always opening doors for people and he can't fight these cabals. I said, well, what you don't realize is that behind every velvet glove is a steel hand.
Come on, yes.
But it doesn't matter. The role, the position of president itself gives you the power to be able to make changes that you can never imagine. But they said to me, oh, even if you win, they will remove you in 100 days. Because you don't know these senators. I said, well, have you ever noticed the way people vote? The way they vote is very simple. They line up on voters, especially on federal voting day, they line up the 3 voting sheets, right? And so they put President, Senate, House of Reps, and they give you one ink pad. You put your thumb on that ink pad, and that's the one you're going to use all through. So you're not going to say President Fela Durotoye, which other one is there? No, they just go 1, 2, 3. So they vote all across the line. How do we know this to be true? Because we realize that in the history of Nigeria, the party of the president has also always had majority in Senate and in House of Reps. Party of the governor has always had majority, it's because of the way people vote. So don't worry about that. They say, oh, he's too clean. Oh, that one, I don't know whether you ever heard that one. So the people were complaining about the fact that, you see, they say he's fine, but it's not by jacket. His shoes don't get dirty when he goes on campaign. I'm like, what? They said, I don't know whether you guys heard that grassroots one. The grassroots don't know him. We said, well, everybody has roots in the grass. Nobody was born in Lagos. And even if you were born in Lagos, your parents came from somewhere else. If it's not your parents, your grandparents. People, call the people you know. My father doesn't know him. Well, ask your father again if he knows him. He will say, is that the guy you talked about yesterday? That means that your father is only one conversation away from knowing the person that you want. You just have to accept responsibility to be the one to tell the people. They said, oh, they don't have the money. Where are we supposed to get the money from? The money that people are using to run the big is your money. Right? But you want guys who won't steal, but then you want the people who would go there and get. If we go to the cabals, they're going to give us handcuffs. They will determine who it is that we appoint and how we are. So the point was, and then of course, then there was one of fake news. Ooh. I'm sure many of you heard different kinds of fake news. Fela Durotoye collected, some people say Fela Durotoye collected 700 million from APC. And then they said that I was going to sell out to PDP. And I'm thinking, which one is it? Is it APC or PDP? Make up your minds. Of course, they also said the one, I don't know whether you heard the one about Fela Durotoye choosing to pull out of the elections. I think that was the one that hurt the most. Because what everybody kept on saying was, we need you guys to come together. Anybody heard that come together thing? Okay. So we said, okay, you know what? I've been saying we should come together for a long time, and I said it doesn't even have to be me. And that it doesn't have to be me, which is what everybody wanted, was what was used against me. To say, he said it doesn't have to be him, so he's ready to step down. And so they said, and then as you know, so these are some of the interesting things that we saw in this journey. And one day I was saying to somebody, I said, the reason why people like me don't run is because of people like me. The reason why people like you don't run is because of people like you. It's not the Yaloja, it's people like us. It's the intellectuals that bring up all these amazing arguments as to why our generation cannot make a difference. It's us forgetting that the people who today are 76 running for office were 41 when they first became head of state. President Buhari was 41, 2 weeks after his 41st birthday. December 31, 1983 was when he became head of state. He was just 2 weeks into his 41st birthday. General Babangida was 44 years old. When at the start of an independent nation, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa was 48 years old. So my point is, guys, and of course then there was the diaspora. And the diaspora were the guys who kept on thinking, well, I'm sure glad that the whole is not our life. Forgetting that, you know what, in a sense, even when you carry another passport, there's something about your skin that just tells people where you are from.
Simple, yeah.
And in the end, you know what happens is that when the nation of your origin does not work, there's just a pain that comes in your heart and then people despise you. You know, one of the ways that I found out is that it's very interesting. I say it this way. I said, collective failure, in spite of individual success, will diminish the pride and joy that you have. And so for us, this was the biggest and the most difficult challenge that we had to deal with.
Yeah, those people.
And in the end, INEC dealt a special blow. The day of the presidential elections, at 3 a.m. they decided to postpone that election. People had traveled from all across. The level of energy was so high. People were traveling from everywhere. I mean, first it was difficult to get to just register to get your voter's card. And then they'll give you, people were leaving their houses to go and queue at 3 a.m. And then you get temporary voter's card before you can get permanent voter's card. They say to you, come after elections. Come after elections to get your permanent voter's card with which you are going to vote. And then you know the rest of the story. We saw something that was really amazing here. So this is the outcome of the 2019 elections. I don't know how many of you have seen it, but I thought that I would share it. And then, so the total number of registered voters rose to 82 million. PVCs distributed to 72 million. But you see something very interesting here. Accredited voters is 29 million. Total valid votes, 27 million. The number of votes that PDP and APC, the establishment, had after 4 years of APC and 16 years of PDP was 26.3 million. So I'll show you something so you get it. This is the one I want you to look at. Other party votes from 400,000 to 1 million. So here is the difference that really makes sense. So based on a lot of the work that we all did together, getting people going out, go to churches, go everywhere, go and get your PVC, organizations were giving their people time off to go and get their PVCs. We saw an increase of almost 15 million new voters coming to the fray. But also, 16.5 million new PVCs were issued. But there was a drop of 2.4 million in the number of accredited voters. And more importantly, there was a rise there. And then a rise of 1.2 million, a drop of 1.2 million in total number of valid votes. Look at this one. 26 million people voted in 2019 for the established parties. 28 million people voted before they even got the power. So that tells you that they lost 1.8 million votes. And the non-political, let's say the new parties gained 600,000. And still we know that even these numbers are challenged.
Yes. Very much.
So where are we going with all of this? We are seeing here, again, that there is apathy amongst the people that should make the difference between the nation. They say great things happen when the young, enlightened people in any nation care. Unfortunately, this is where the challenge is. We're dealing with a mind frame. So, guys, what next? You ask me, and I have to finish that in 2 minutes. What next? It comes back to this. See, I always said to people when they ask me on the journey, if you don't win, what will you do? I said, I'll do what I've been doing before I ever ran for office.
Simple.
And that is to continue to build Nigeria. Because I am incurably, I cannot deny the potential of Nigeria, not even in a dream. So we've got to find ways. So what are we doing? Very simply, continuing the work we're doing. But this time we have to do it on a non-partisan basis. In other words, we've got to find ways now today to begin to say, how do we get people, good people, to run and get elected into office? And hopefully begin to change that cycle. How do we get to go to states, governments, and local governments and run leadership training with them and begin to get them to change their culture? And today we're looking at partnering with the private sector who are saying, yeah, we can actually fund that for you. Shell Petroleum Company a few years ago got me to speak to all the local government chairmen in Rivers State. Those guys turned around something, especially in the second year and people saw the difference between the first time of Rotimi Amici and the second time of Rotimi Amici. Governor Fashola got Bank PHB to actually pay me to run a leadership retreat for all the local government chairmen in Lagos State. First Bank can do that. It's not being partisan. It's just saying, can we help? Because guess what? The quality of leadership that you get and the operating environment is set by these guys. So you might as well just decide to invest in putting them. Look, AIG Foundation, which is the foundation set up by Ike Mokwele, right, paid McKinsey to go and do some intervention work, culture transformation work with the federal government, right? I'm saying that we have to find ways to collaborate now, and these are the kind of things that we're doing, and we've been doing all the other things. Now, look at this, 2020 is the next opportunity for us to make a difference. There are 8,810 ward councillors and 774 local government chairmen. Of those, something in the region of about 4,500 or so of them are going to be elected or re-elected in 2020. So what we're doing right now is trying to see how to train 5,000 bright minds that will run for ward councillorship on whatever party they want to. And train 500. Everything I have learned on this journey, I want to make available to a group of people who will go in there like foxes with fire on their tails, go in there and begin to see how we can get down to the grassroots. And see, because until we fix that, then really life is not much. I want to show you something that would blow your mind. You know, a lot of times when people think about local government, they don't realize how few votes really they need. Etiosa local government is one of the largest local governments in Nigeria. It's made up of suburb areas like Ikoyi, Obalende, Victoria Island, Oniru, Lekki. Some of you know these places. Population of about 4.5 million people. It's a migrant population, meaning that most people came into Etiosa already grown up. And so, in a sense, that's like almost a voting public population. Cut the long story short, right? Etiosa local government elections in 2017, and which you would expect now. Don't forget, this is the corporate headquarters of Nigeria. That's where most of the HQs of Nigeria are. This is where it's the third richest local government in Nigeria. It's also the local government of the, leaders of the APC and the PDP, at least in the southwest. So whoever becomes local government chairman of Etiosa is like the biggest boy. This is one of those local governments that they say in our parlance, they say is a cartoon local government. So you would expect that all the two political parties will do everything they can to make sure that they win. Well, guys, look at it. The total number of people who voted for such an important local government chairman, 11,769 people. You guys have more than 11,000 people on your Twitter page, or you're following you on Twitter. I mean, guys, can you imagine? And then we end up with Honorable Said Shegun. His chief of staff is my real estate agent. And like 6 months onto his term, the guy came to meet me one day saying, Egbon, I don't know how we can come and see you. If you can even just give us a few ideas.
Oh my God.
He never campaigned. He didn't have to. He just went to a place and they said, okay, you are the one.
Just go.
I don't know whether you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But with 10,000, we can change that. We can change that. So it's about fixing this, all right? And making sure that we have people who accept responsibility. Because that's what I'm trying to do now. Get a group and a generation of Nigerians to accept responsibility for this nation. Stop looking at Nigeria as if you are, it's a football game that is going on. You're sitting on the sidelines making commentary. We are sent to change the nation that we were either born in or have lineage in. But we must accept responsibility. We must believe in ourselves as a generation. I kept on telling our young people, listen, the guys that you are calling old today were young and they believed in themselves. It wasn't that there were no 70-something-year-old people at that time, but they believed that they could do it. Why don't you think you can? And then we must begin to commit. And commit means to sacrifice, to take what we've got to get what we want. And lastly, we must continue to do everything we can until we can deliver it. Let me tell you something. I know a lot of people constantly come and meet me and say, Fela, please, we don't want you to give up. I say that, don't worry about me. I can never give up on Nigeria. You are the one I'm worried about. I don't want you to give up on Nigeria.
That's it.
And so, let's build a nation. We have the capacity. We're blessed enough to be the greatest nation. Let's do it. I love the way Nelson Mandela said it. He said, sometimes it falls upon a generation to be great. He says, you can be that great generation, but you must
let your greatness
blossom. You must give action to your acceptance of responsibility. And so it's all about new Nigerians who will make a positive impact on everyone they meet every day and everywhere they go, every day. The way they drive, the way they work. If they can be solution providers and not throw things on the road, rather than pick it up when it's thrown. If we on a daily basis, I think give your best to it, do the best with it. If we can do the right thing at all times, regardless of who's doing the wrong thing. And if we can value time, make the best use of it, care and show respect to everyone that you meet, rich or poor, young or old, male or female, show respect, honor them, care about them, be concerned about their well-being through your words and your actions. build a great legacy. Since I think the best thing that we have to understand is that every generation can only be judged by what it gives to its children, not what it inherited from its parents. Our generation's legacy would be the Nigeria we bequeath, not the one we inherited.
Sure.
And we can build a great nation. We must live lives of integrity and honor. I told my children, I said, I make you a promise. I will not do anything on this campaign journey that I have told you not to do or I expect you not to do. And I told them, I said, I promise you that you will not find out anything. There will be nothing that we kept silent or kept secrets that we did. And I'm very grateful for the grace and the strength to know that we kept our values throughout.
So good.
Even when it was easier to sell out. Today I'm so happy to say my family is extremely proud of me. Many people here say to me, that's the one thing I hear most, Fela, I'm so proud of you. And I'm so proud of the way you ran. And I'm so proud of what you've done for this generation. You've gone beyond just talking about the greatness of Nigeria. You've put yourself on the line. But I keep saying to myself, it's not about me. In the end, it is about you. So that we go from that nation that has a carrot under to building a generation that inspires Africa to become great. I want Nigeria to become the model for Africa on how we build great nations. And I know we can do this together. And I want to say thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.